I'm your host, Ogechi. Welcome to Deep Roots with Nigeria Baby in Texas, where we have honest conversations that help us grow emotionally, culturally, and professionally. Today's conversation is one we don't talk about very often, but I believe is very, very important. It's about men's mental health. For many men, especially within African American, African immigrant communities, strength has often meant silence. What happens when that silence becomes heavy? Very special guest, Eric Griffin. Eric is the founder of BFED, Mind, Body, and Spirit. He is a personal development platform and movement centered on intentional growth. Eric is a U.S. Air Force veteran, tech professional, future attorney. I don't know why he calls himself future attorney. He's an attorney already. Eric is passionate about men's mental health and personal development through accountability, resilience, and helping people become the best versions of themselves. When was the last time you checked in on how you are really doing emotionally? Eric, welcome to Deep Roots with Nigeria Baby in Texas. We're glad to have you as we kick off this raw conversation about what mental health really looks like for men, why it's often ignored, and how healing can begin. Let's dig into it. Eric, welcome to the show. I'm really grateful to have you. Before we get into the conversation, Eric, if you don't mind, can you introduce yourself and share a bit about yourself? What led you to focus on BFED? Was there any personal moment that changed how you viewed mental health?
Before I start, I wanted to thank you, first of all, for being such a gracious host. We go way back. You've always brought a smile to my face. It's just great to engage with you again, and more so on this topic of men's mental health. BFED is a personal development, like you said, platform, movement. It started off as my own personal journey, trying to be more resilient as I went through some hard times, especially going through law school and then COVID at the same time, and then having my two young daughters with me. It was basically born out of a necessity for me to survive. It was to a point to where my mind was slipping, my body was weary, and my spirit was just at an all-time low. Through the work with my life coach at the time, I woke up with an epiphany that I just need to be fed. I got to be intentional and deliberate about it. So BFED was born out of an intentional effort for me to feed myself all the things I need to do to not only survive, because at that time it was survival, but now just only to thrive, really. So that's what BFED was born. And with that, those pillars, mind, body, and spirit, mental health is definitely one of the core premises that I love to talk about and that I love to even read about and do research on, because that's one of the primary pillars that helps build a successful and helpful life.
That's well said. So who is Eric? Give us a bit of background.
I used to tell myself that I was just like the most average guy you could ever be, like the average height, average weight, average skill. As I meet more and more people, they seem to think that I'm more than just an average guy, which most of us are. Average is relative. But I am a 23-year Air Force officer, soon to be retiree. Yeah,
23.
I am a avid traveler. I am a proud dad of two beautiful daughters, or young women now. I am a brother. I am a father. I am a friend. I am a frat brother. Shout out to Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. The story that I try to tell people is I am just like everybody else. Like we all have our individual, paths on this earth. I am no better, no worse than anybody else. We all have our own interesting individual journeys. And so I'm just one to echo mine so more people know that, hey, there is help out there. And then in terms of mental health, we don't have to be silent. There are things we can do to be more mentally resilient.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. I will say he's an amazing human being. He's extremely loyal. He loves his friends. And one of the things we both have in common is that we love to travel. So that's one of those things that we have good conversations around. I met him in a professional environment, and he has a lot of great experience. Like he said, he went to law school, so he's also very intelligent. So he's not giving himself enough grace. So I will toot his own horn since he can't
I
toot it
appreciate
himself.
that. Learn is the more I learn is the more I don't know anything. So I appreciate it.
Yes.
Let's
So
get
the
it.
why, the why, right? Understanding mental health. Why is it that men's mental health deserves more open and honest discussion? I know women do a good job of talking and having that.
Yeah.
We do a better job
Yes.
than I truly believe men do. Just from my own experience with my relationships with male friends, I just feel like they don't do a great job around managing their mental health.
We don't. Most of that is driven, of course, by cultural stigma that
Mm-hmm.
we always have to be hard and you got to be strong. And the funny thing is, the more I learn about this stuff, the more I'm realizing that that's the way to be strong. Is just being resilient, understanding how to deal with your emotions. That's what makes us strong. I think it hasn't been talked about in the past because, like I said, culturally, that's just what we've always done. I think it's becoming more and more pronounced in our communities, the lack of mental health awareness and education that we have. And so if we're going to grow, especially in these ever-changing times, we're going to grow as a community and as a culture, then we have to address the mental health issues and the disparity in between getting help and not getting help.
Yeah. And when we're talking about mental health, we're talking about anxiety, we're talking about stress, we're talking
Right.
about depression, we're talking about traumas. And traumas could be, you lost a loved one, you've lost your job, you're going through a difficult time. COVID was really, I
Oh,
think, a
man.
traumatic experience for a number of us. And I don't think we really realized
How bad that was, yeah.
yes, how
Yeah.
bad it was and
And that
how.
impact is, yeah, still being
Yes,
felt.
exactly. And the reason we bring up COVID is also because, a lot of people were isolated, whether alone or with somebody, depending on the person you're with. It may not have been a great experience, right? In general, I just want people to understand that when we're talking about mental health, we're just talking about burnout, trauma, anxiety, depression, stress.
Right.
Stress is a big thing. I know within our culture, a lot of men are taught to be brave, to be strong, to not talk about their problems. They're the providers. They should man up. Men don't cry. Those types of the financial pressure because they're also taught to be providers as well. When they're not providing, that's also another heavy weight that they carry around with them that could lead to anxiety, could lead to depression. And people like you that were in the military, I would imagine,
Oh, yeah.
based on some of the things that you guys see and experience, also create those type of traumatic situations as well.
Right. You definitely said a whole lot to unpack. Like you said, the stigma is just it's real. I don't think anybody would deny that. One of the leveling points that I do when I try to discuss the mental health is that when you talk about stress and anxiety, depression, trauma, burnout, those are innate human experiences, right?
Exactly.
They're not specific to men, they're not specific to women, it's the race, whatever, it doesn't matter. That's the human experience.
Exactly.
So I try to level set that so people understand that when you do talk about it and when you do address the mental issues, it's a human thing, it's not just a man thing. And so now that kind of breaks down the barrier of machismo that we have. It's like, oh, we can't talk about, are you human? Yeah, if you're human, then you need to talk about it because we have to manage these things because they have a vital effect, not only on our persons, but to our families and our communities. And so that's how I try to level set it. But like you said, it does include stress. It includes anxiety, depression, the cultural expectation to just man up and just take it. I guess it's worked up to this far, if you want to say work, quote unquote. But where we're at now and where we're going with the changing times, we need to deal with these so we can not only maintain, but we can flourish as a community, as a family, as a person, as an individual on all levels.
Yeah, I don't think it's worked. This is something that has always been in existence. We've always, not really addressed it. So it's good to see that the stigma around mental health, embracing it more and tolerating it.
When I say it's working, I didn't mean working as in effect.
Exactly.
It's been what we've done up to this point.
Exactly. Yeah, I didn't want anybody taking that away. Even as a sister, as a spouse, as a friend, what are those signs that we need to pay attention to that they're struggling to be able to kind of guide them? the best
So
that we
that's
can.
a good question because as somebody who's, like I said, experienced it, I call myself the so-called case study in mental health.
Mm.
Recognizing that from the outside in is even harder because the same way that the stigma is for us to hold that inside, you kind of learn how to hide it.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So it's
Yeah.
kind of normalized. So there's sometimes you wouldn't even know. My goal, and as far as Be Fed goes, is to make it intentional so you recognize it in yourself, and then you could address it accordingly. But from the outside looking in, I would say look for the standard normal warning signs. It's like withdrawal, silence, a lot of deep thought. Sometimes you can look at people and see that they're in like deep thought or there's something troubling going on. Those standard indicators that like, hey, something's going on with them are usually key indicator that their mental health is not right. So challenge to everybody is, if you see something, say something. Just like a criminal activity or something like that, if you see that
Hmm.
somebody's withdrawn, you've seen somebody's not really discussing or in the conversation like they usually are, you just see anything out of the normal, ask the question. Say, hey man, you good? You all right? Like, this is just one of those things where it can be highly visible and then at the same time it can be hidden. So it's
Yeah.
kind of one of those things. I would rather everybody err on the side of caution and just ask everybody how they're doing, have that
Yes.
check in, than to
Hmm.
look for quote unquote signs that something is
Yeah.
wrong. Because usually if you see the signs, something is probably way past due.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
Right.
And I would
Yeah.
even add to that, just paying attention to somebody who's typically always bubbly and all of a sudden they can't get out of bed.
Right.
They are not, they're taking so many days off work for whatever reasons, which is not normal or in that person's particular case. But to Eric's point, I totally agree. Don't wait till things get really bad. If you see something, just say something. If you feel something off,
Right.
just bring it up. And
Yeah. My goal is to normalize asking those questions as an everyday thing. So one of the things that me and my close friends and those that are building Be Fed with me, we literally have like Be Fed moments, and we tell each other, like, instead of goodbye, we like Be Fed as an indicator to like, hey, make sure you're deliberate about doing the things to feed yourself. Hopefully we can get to that point. I believe the more we talk about it, these conversations like this help. And then all the other things, I got a book coming out on mental health that's closely related to mental health. Like, the
mhm.
more we get it out, we want it to be a normalized thing to where mental health is not a stigma. It's just something we discuss and we address every day to make sure that we're, acting in our highest possible, vibes or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. I like that idea of checking in every day. And it doesn't have to be a phone call. It could be just a text. Are you good?
Yeah.
Everything good? Yeah. Or every week or whatever. Whatever.
Think about it. I'm just like, let me go ahead and do it because I don't want to not do it and then something happens and I'm not able to and I just regret it. I don't like living with regret. And so now I'm more
Yeah.
proactive than reactive.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm one of those people where when somebody's on my mind, I'm like, okay, I need to check in just to make sure they're okay. Because if they're in my mind, they're in my mind for a reason. Yeah, yeah, I like
Yeah.
that. I like that.
So I'm not sure if I answered all your questions because, like I said, and I apologize because I tend to get sidetracked when I'm having a great conversation. And so if I didn't ask any questions, I didn't answer any questions, feel free to just ask me again and let me be
Yeah.
more specific.
So, what do you think men's fears are in talking about their feelings and just being vulnerable? I think part
Um,
of this is also about vulnerability, right?
I think the fear, like I said, stigmas usually come from the fear of judgment of other people. I'm not going to assume because I can say from experience, you don't want to be judged. You don't want to be looked down upon. And
Mm-hmm.
then even as a man, part of the stigma is that you don't want to be looked as less than.
Or
And
weak.
so, or weak, exactly.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so I think that's the fear that usually keeps it out. And then sometimes, believe it or not, and I had this fear, it's the fear of admitting you have a problem.
That's
Like, it's
true
a
too.
personal fear. And so I
Yeah.
had that problem for a long time because, I'm the type that I really don't care what other people think most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I do care about what I think about myself. And so there's some internal judgment that goes there. And I think that's a big part of the fear that keeps men from addressing those issues.
Yeah, and it could also be like you talked about cultural things, but even just your household, how you grew up.
Hmm.
What are those generational things that were taught to the men, in the household for them to believe that it's okay
To not.
to
Yeah.
not handle certain situations, whether it be on processed grief, right?
Right.
I have a friend who lost his brother, lost his dad, lost his nephew, and just keeps going. The other day, I was like, dude, do you know you've had all this grief? Do you know all of this is trauma that you've been dealing with it, but you just keep
You just
moving and keep moving and keep moving.
and yeah,
I'm like,
internalizing it. It's just building up, building
yeah,
up,
it's
building up.
building up, building up, building up. I was like, no, you need to go seek therapy. You need to go figure something out to be able to let all that baggage that is in your body.
You see the baggage in him? Do you see him carrying that weight from the outside looking in, or is that something he? Because it, like I said, I don't want to discount anybody and how they
Yeah,
handle
they can.
their issue. But if you could see it, and like I said, if you've seen it and seen him address that, yes, you do need to go to therapy. You need to unpack all that stuff because you can tell when it's weighing on somebody.
Yeah, I couldn't see him because he's not somebody that I see on a regular basis, but there
Mm-hmm.
were conversations that we were having that I knew there were certain words used that I
Mm-hmm.
was like, what's going on here? This is not like him. And
Right.
so,
See, you're one of those
uh,
type of people that you are attuned to humanity because you
yeah,
are just like a joyful human being, and I can see you being so in tune. Like, okay, that doesn't sound right, or that doesn't sound normal.
yeah,
The goal is to get everybody like you, so we can. So when people, so
yeah.
I can
And
appreciate it in you. I see that in you all the way.
I was like, no, that doesn't sound right. You need to deal with that. And it was somebody I knew that I've known him over the years, and so realizing, okay, you know what, he's gone through all this grief. I know he hasn't unpacked all these things, right? So I want to talk about the importance of redefining strength to include self-awareness, honesty, and healing, which is kind of like what I kind of just tapped into a little bit when I was talking about my friend, is
Mm-hmm.
what if strength looked different from what we were taught? How do we redefine the way we think or restructure the way we've been thinking um,
So
to redefine or rebuild that strength or build that awareness that there is something wrong? How do we help people to strengthen that self awareness?
So first of all is awareness, and or like you said earlier, Fed is really all about redefining what that strength is. So as
Mm-hmm.
the stigma, as far as the culture, strength was withholding it. Strength was not exposing it. You know what I mean? Strength
Yes,
was literally
yes.
dictated as like how much you could hide, how bad you were hurting. And that's sad even coming out of my mouth. It sounds just so
Mm-hmm.
ridiculous. But the goal of Fed in discussions like this is to redefine what that strength looks like. And for me, I think it's acknowledgement, like I said, awareness. I want strength to look like self evaluation every day. Like, how do I feel today? Like, what am I gonna do to make sure that I feel good today? And how am I gonna express that? And if I'm feeling bad, what can I do to change that? Like, just being intentional and deliberate about your mental health on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
And that's completely different than what we're used to. Like I said, usually it's hidden. Now I want it to be out in the open, and I want it to be part of a daily practice. And it doesn't have to be open like as in public, but just open to your mind as as something you need to address every day.
I would add to that, just being more vulnerable, is courageous. People think vulnerability is weakness, but it's not. It's courage. Being vulnerable with yourself and being able to recognize when something is off that you need to
Right.
pay attention to and act towards it. Your emotional awareness, how are you feeling? How is it? Knowing that it's okay to have that emotional awareness. If you're feeling off about something, be okay to express that emotion without necessarily suppressing it.
Right.
To me, that's also healthy masculinity versus just holding it in to the definition that you had of strength. But it's also okay to be vulnerable. It's also okay to express those emotions. The ripple effect of being able to recognize that, to your point, every day, you're also pouring back in, not only to yourself, but to your family, your community, your friends, redefining what strength really means.
Right. And you
Right.
mentioned vulnerability as courage. I like to really think of it as like there's strength in vulnerability because you are now aware that something is vulnerable. You know what I mean? That you
Yes,
have no,
yes,
and there's strength in knowing that because now you know that you need options. Like one of the worst things is having blind vulnerabilities is
yes.
having those points of impact that could really damage you and not know that you had those points. That's the weakness really. And so having vulnerability as a strength, and like you said, as courage, emotional awareness. Like I said,
Mm,
I'm a strong proponent of like just always being emotionally aware of what's
mm-hmm.
going on. always knowing what your feelings are, always being to name your feelings. During my time with my life coach, I didn't know any other feelings but anger and
Mm-hmm.
just, a stoic nature. I just don't know. Like, I didn't know what joy was. She asked me what joy was, and I said I couldn't even define it. I don't even know what it is. And I had to like do some real internal research and figure out like, okay, my daughters are my joy, but I didn't even know how to name that. And so,
Oh, wow.
yeah, it was one of the most eye opening things ever, because I was like, how do you not know what joy is? And not being able to elaborate and explain what that was. And so having the courage and, like you said, the leadership to speak to that and to own up to that, even as an individual, I think that's what will be redefined as strength amongst us as a culture.
What do you think about the phrase real strength is choosing to grow?
I like that phrase. That phrase, real strength is choosing to grow. It's like the way I think of it is that if you understand who you are in life and what life has to offer, you know that every day is a chance to learn more, to be more, to grow, experience more. So growth is a part of being human. And so you want to maximize that. Even in our travels and all the stuff that we've done, we've experienced, like, we know that having those different experiences is growth to us, because it
Mm-hmm.
allows us to grow our minds, grow our spirits, and grow our, our bodies. Real strength in choosing to grow anyway is just like being intentional and deliberate, knowing that, hey, I don't have to stay where I'm at. I can grow. The real strength
Mm-hmm.
is like I can make a choice and say, hey, I want to experience life at a whole nother level. In
Mm-hmm.
order for me to grow, real strength is choosing to do things that's going to do that.
Yeah. I would even say it's feeding yourself from a
Yes.
spiritual perspective, is feeding yourself from a mental perspective, is feeding yourself with joy, feeding
Mm-hmm.
yourself with gratitude, but you're constantly feeding yourself by growing. Without growth, being fed is very, very important, and being fed in so many different aspects, whether it be health, whether it be spirituality, whether it be emotionally, whether it be professionally, but at least
Right.
you're feeding yourself with something that is helping you grow to a bigger, better
And
person.
bring that back around. That's where the real strength comes from, is doing that intentionally. Like, you
Yes,
know that
yes,
I need to feed myself in this. I know I'm lacking over in this part. I need to be
mm,
fed in that area. And so
yes.
that's where the real strength from. And that's choosing to grow at the same time. So it kind
Time,
of goes right
yeah,
in line.
yeah, 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 yeah. So, what would you say healthy masculinity is or should look like?
So yeah, that's a loaded question. Healthy masculinity is very, of course, especially this day and age, subjective.
Yeah,
If you're asking me specifically, I think healthy masculinity is just being totally aware of what encompasses who you are, and that's your mind, body, and spirit. I hate to sound cliche, but I'm tying it back to that. But healthy
yeah,
masculinity is being aware of your feelings and knowing how to address those feelings. It's being aware of your body, knowing how to stay healthy and not get sick, or know to keep your blood pressure down. Like,
yeah.
yeah, all those things kind of fall into the area.
Yeah, I agree with you. Let's now talk about some practical steps towards healing. So, what would you say the connection should be between mental health, physical health, purpose, and that daily discipline? Why healing is requires support and accountability.
The first step in healing is acknowledging that something's wrong. So education is a big part on my end, is that providing people with the resources and the knowledge to know what it is that I need to heal. If I got traumas, if I don't know their traumas, if nobody tells me what a trauma is and where they stem from, I don't know to heal that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Mm-hmm.
even know that that's a thing to heal. And so, like I said, I think amongst men mostly is that we're so unaware that we have problems, because it's become so normalized. It's like, that's, you're a man, you're supposed to have those problems. Education is going to be the key to getting us to a place of healing, because you have to be aware that there's a problem. You have to acknowledge that this is impacting me in this kind of way, and the only way I can know that is through the education and the us talking about it, like on mediums like this.
So, for you, how did you get to your healing point? What triggered for you to start healing? If you don't mind sharing.
No, no, I don't mind at all. I'm very open with that,
Uh,
because that's what's going to help future men and humans in general. What started with me was literally hitting rock bottom, or what I would call
uh,
rock bottom. Being so mentally, out of it that I can't remember what I did 2 minutes ago. Not
uh,
remembering, this little thing, forgetting to pick up my daughter, the little stuff, like, not little
uh,
stuff, but big stuff like that.
uh,
Um, my body, getting sick all the time, being sore, eating bad foods, and, having aches and pains that I never knew, like just hitting rock bottom, spiritually being just blah about everything, not having the vigor and, the tenacity that I used to have. Like hitting the bottom is what led me to realize that there's a problem and that I need to heal.
So did you talk to somebody?
Well, I did, yeah. So what happened was when I hit that bottom, I had no clue what to do. Fortunately, during COVID, so resources weren't that available. So luckily, I had a friend of mine she was starting her journey in life coaching, and she was like, "Hey, this is the stuff I'm doing. If they can help you, by all means, I'll help you." And so in talking to her and started, working with her coaching practice and building me up, like at that point of acknowledging that, hey, I need help. And what does that look like? I started to work on those solutions for myself. I don't know if you remember, but I started sharing like on Facebook.
I know that.
And I was doing that because I was vulnerable at first because I was like, I don't want nobody to know I'm doing this, because that was part of the barriers to us getting help. That outside judgment. So I tried to like let go of that judgment and say, hey, I'll be vulnerable so other people can see that, hey, you're not the only one, and that there's resources and people out there that's willing to help.
Wow. So what I like about the discussion we just had is the fact that, you had that honest conversation with a friend who was able to help guide you. You also normalized the ability to get the resource to help you. In your case, it was a coach. In other people's cases, it could be therapy, it could be faith-based counseling, whatever that helps them. Then you were building a routine to be able to help address the issues, but also restructure going through that journey of healing and becoming a better you for you. Right? Yeah. And guys, really, and humans in general, because Eric raises a great point, is that it's not just a man or woman issue. It's a human issue. The only reason that I'm highlighting it as a man issue for today's topic is because I know that men tend to have these issues, but they don't have the ability. They have the resources, but they don't really talk about it or address it. And so we're having this conversation to encourage men to normalize this and to normalize being able to have a conversation with somebody and get the resources or get the help that they need to be able to get that healing that they need or get to that better self.
And we appreciate that. Like I said, I didn't say that to take the topic off men, but I really appreciate you being willing to have the conversation is probably going to help a lot more people than just me and you having the conversation just one-on-one.
Yeah.
So I think these kind of conversations are needed. And so I appreciate you for even focusing on this, especially for Black males.
I have too many male friends. It's either they don't want to go to the doctor to take care of themselves physically or take care of themselves mentally, or just take care of themselves.
It's a thing.
They take care of everybody else, but they don't take care of themselves. And I don't understand it. For me, it goes back to sitting on that plane when they tell you put your mask on first before you can help anybody else, right? If I can't help myself, I'm not of any value to my spouse, my children, my friends, my family, whatever it is, right? But for whatever reason, men just feel they just keep going.
It's part of the culture, like you said. It's a stigma, but we're gonna work on that. We're gonna try to fix that between these conversations and the stuff that we're doing later on.
Yes. We're going to have more topics on this because Eric, he's the founder of BeFed and he has great tips. So we are going to be creating another episode where we'll be diving more into what he does and how men can be part of BeFed, because the goal is to get men to release that burden, to be free and to be fed and to start that healing journey to be their best authentic selves in their families, in their communities, in their relationships. We have a goal, or at least for me, I have a goal and I know Eric has a goal. And the goal is to support our men to be their best authentic selves. Mentally, physically, spiritually, they are the best they can possibly be. Humans in general.
Yeah. You mentioned about having a conversation with too many men that you can tell that they need to go get that help, or at least look internally to acknowledge what it is. We seem to be a little less guarded in those, but the fact that you are acknowledging that and seeing that in your conversations, and along with the conversations I've had, it's definitely a point that we need to be discussing and tackling.
So as we wrap up today's segment, this conversation just reminds us that silence is not strength. Healing doesn't make you less of a man. It makes you whole. It makes you a man of courage, a man of empathy, and a man of strength. To take that moment to ask yourself, what am I carrying that I no longer want to carry alone? That's in essence what we're talking about. What am I carrying that I no longer want to carry alone? Where do I need to get the resources to support me in being able to release what I'm carrying? And like we said earlier, we've talked about you can talk to a friend, you can talk to a partner, you can talk to a mentor, you can even talk to your doctor. Do you have any recommendations of what I can do? So your doctor is also somebody to be able to help guide you, and not being afraid to go to therapy or get a coach or get somebody. Eric, what would be that one message to men who are struggling quietly that you want to encourage them to do?
If I had one message, it would be to be intentional, be deliberate, be aware, and then after you got all that, then be fed. Feed yourself the things you know you need to feed. Like if it's therapy or if you don't have answers, feed yourself a therapy session. Like do the things that you know you need to do to get into your most optimal place. We know as men when we are in an optimal place, especially mentally, physically, and emotionally or spiritually. Be aware of that, acknowledge that, and then feed yourself what it needs you need to get to that point that you know that you're the most optimal and best person that you are. That would be my one message. Be fed.
Be fed, mind, body, and spirit. To get access to Eric's website, please, you can reach him at www.befed.life. I'll say it again, www.befed.life. We'll definitely be posting the link to his website as well. Thank you for tuning in to Deep Rooted Niger Baby in Texas. Eric, thank you for this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for just being you. You are such an awesome individual that anything you need from me, I'm there.
Thank you again, Eric, for being part of this. And then to my beautiful audience, if this episode resonates with you, please share it with a man you care about. And I hope you care about all of our men, not just the one that you see every single day, but share with your brother, share with your friend, share with your colleague, share it with your roommate, whoever that's in your life, please share it with them. Let's
going to help.
Yes, let's normalize healing. Let's normalize honesty about this conversation. Let's normalize emotional health and how important it is. Until next time, keep growing in clarity, truth, and power. So thank you, Eric.